Hi there, I'm Kevin Benedict, Senior Vice President of Solution Strategy here at Regalix, and I want to welcome everyone out there for joining us today. In this episode, we have a really interesting topic that I think actually this is the first time we've addressed this topic in this series, and that is the role of networks and network automation in digital transformation. And I want to welcome today our guest, Ian Bresnahan, who's the CEO and co-founder of Itential. Welcome, Ian.
Hey, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me in the discussion.
Absolutely. So where are you calling in from today, Ian?
Calling in from the headquarters of Itential here in Atlanta, Georgia.
All right. So what part of Atlanta? There's a big circle that I'm familiar with driving around Atlanta. You north, south, east, west?
Well, we have a lot of our DNA is with Georgia Tech. So we're in Midtown, very close to the Georgia Tech facility.
All right. I just passed there a few weeks ago in a car. So when I want to dig deep and find out the details of the role of networks, I go to a political scientist like you, Ian. What's that all about?
There's a lot of principles that apply from political science to these. So yeah, I'm taking full advantage of that education.
All right. Well, I'm teasing you because I as well have a degree in political science. But when I was a college intern, I was working at the IBM Product Center in Portland, Oregon. And I found out that there was a whole new lifestyle in high tech that I thought was compelling. So I leaned heavy into high tech right out of college, even though I did have a political science degree. So I can appreciate that.
Exactly the path I took as well.
So Ian, let's think about this. Talk to me about what made you start, or what compelled you and motivated you to create a startup focused on network automation.
When we started this in 2014, we've got global operations, Brazil and the UK, and we were always software guys. And at the time we did a stint, my co-founder, Chris Wade, and myself, we did a stint with a large equipment provider. And we quickly realized that this world was moving towards a cloud-based offering. We started hearing all these buzzwords with software-defined networks, NFV, and blah, blah. And what we realized is that we felt like the last frontier, when we already moved compute, we moved storage into the cloud. The network was the bottleneck. And as we started moving towards these new software-based solutions, we realized that there was going to be a major frontier and some big challenges for our customers to overcome. We also knew in the vendor community there's going to be dinosaurs. Not everybody's going to be able to make the journey. And so we didn't understand exactly how we were going to fit in this new ecosystem. We just knew the ecosystem was starting to get a lot of momentum, and we wanted to participate in it.
Got it. So, I mean, when we think about networks, we think about the connectivity between different systems, right? In different locations that have the ability to move data around. So, is that how you would describe it, or how would you describe it, I guess?
Well, if you look at a network and how we operate networks, there's been very little innovation in the last 15 years. There's been a lot of barrier entries. Because these are physical, because every vendor will sell solutions with their own interface, with their own way to access them, manage them, support them, it's very difficult for new entrants to enter this world. There's so many discrete devices, discrete platforms that are out there. The barrier entry was very, very high. Now when we start moving towards this software, two things happen. One, we have software now that makes this old stuff look like software, which is exciting. And two, the stuff that's coming out right now is all cloud native. It's all coming out in a way that we can do things we haven't been able to do in the past to make this migration.
All right. So the role of the network in digital transformation, let's talk about that. Digital transformation is being motivated by all kinds of things. Social, mobile, analytics, cloud, internet, new cybersecurity requirements. All this is referring to the movement of data from various locations, from various devices and storage areas, all of that. And what you're identifying, if I understand this right, is that all of that movement of data can be slowed down by network migrations, network updates, network installations and implementations. How am I going so far for a political scientist?
Very good.
So is that your understanding as well? And what role do you see networks playing in the overall digital transformation of a company?
Well, if you look at how things are done today, and I think we got to look at the problem in two areas. One, how do we do it today, and how are we going to do it tomorrow? Today, if I want to move data, or I want to add a new application, I want to roll out a new service, I want to add branches, whatever it is, that requires somebody has to go out and say, do I have capacity to do that? Do I have security authentication to be able to do that? Do I need to punch a hole in a firewall? Do I need to, blah, blah, blah. That's an 80-page Word, Excel document that somebody is actually going out and following. And even though we may have ticketing systems that track that, it still says Ian Bresnahan has to go out there and check this port, check this capacity. And it's incredibly slow, it's incredibly cumbersome, and it's fraught with error. And so the idea is, why do we have humans doing what humans are doing when machines should be able to make those decisions on our behalf? The machines should be able to look at it and say, if there's capacity, I have the proper credentials, why can't I automatically turn that up and go? And if you look at how it's being done by the big boys, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons, they're already doing all this. So it's not a question of if it can be done, it's when it is going to be done. And a lot of our clients that we see have to operate in two different worlds, the world as it is today and the world as it's going to be tomorrow. And how do I make that journey down that so that I do have a programmable software-based network that I can now automate on top of? And if you look at 5G, connected cars, IoT, all this stuff, without this foundation, you can't do those things. It has to be automated.
So let's talk about that concept of automation. What does that involve? When I talk about automation, I think of robotics, robotic process automation, all these kinds of things out there. Is that how you're interpreting it?
That's right. So once, again, if we can make these things look like software, we should be able to automate processes that were manual. So we should be able to make decisions. The intent of what I want to do on the network, that should be inferred throughout an entire process. And there will be times when humans get involved, but of that 80-step process, maybe we need to make 3 decisions. We don't need to be making 80 decisions. So your point of robotics is very applicable to what we're trying to do on the networks and what we're doing with our customers.
Okay, so walk me through a scenario here. Companies today, because of fast-changing consumer behaviors, have an absolute requirement to be agile, to be able to adjust systems, adjust processes, to chase after these fast-changing consumer behaviors. How might your solution assist a company in that effort?
And you're right, it is all about velocity. And if you look at, there's a lot of discussion about cost reduction, OpEx. It's about velocity. It's the speed of rolling out services. And back to the whole principles in the data center, if we just look at the principles we've had in the data center around DevOps, and now you look at a network, those principles don't apply. And even worse, the people that operate the networks really aren't necessarily very strong in software development. And the people really strong in the data center and software development really don't understand how networks are being operated. So it's a complex environment, and we've got all this new stuff just rolling out. So the idea is we have to have a low-code environment. Meaning, if I'm a software developer, I need to be able to have a template that allows me to infer what I want the network to do without having to understand the network. If I look at integrations, it's got to be out of the box. We can't spend software development time integrating the solutions that everybody has. We need to be able to plug and play and be able to have solutions that integrate right out of the get-go. And the last thing, which has been kind of new to us that we really didn't understand until the last 24 months, is how important it is to visualize this automation process. Everybody can talk about this, but how do I look at my process in one place and find out areas that I can automate, find out how am I doing it in a way that I can exact change in one area and then have it proliferate throughout the environment. So our whole premise, the Itential platform, is all about taking this very complex journey and simplify it so that people can consume these new technologies in a very rapid, agile way.
Got it. So if you consider the whole ecosystem around a company's IT systems and systems of systems and everything they have there, You've identified one of the areas, if I understand it right, that you think still lacks the ability to be agile and to be done efficiently and automated. So that's the area you guys are tackling. Am I correct in that understanding?
100%. People need to be able to consume this stuff. They need to be able to digest it, and they need to be able to move as quickly as possible. And I think there was a study done and say, how many network engineers really understand software development? And it's a unicorn. You know, it's not a very easy thing for those worlds to come together. And our platform is exactly that. How do we make Itential makes that journey?
Got it. So does it matter what kind of technologies you're connecting to from a network perspective, or are those kind of black boxes to you and you're just focused on moving data, creating connections quicker, faster, better?
That's actually the most important point. They're not black boxes anymore. And that was the barrier to entry. Everything was this esoteric way, and you had to have somebody who understood that device or that service to make that change. Now that we abstract the complexity away, there aren't black boxes. And so our customers love it because whatever is underneath, at this point, it's not as important as what am I operationally doing with that? And I can make decisions now on what's best for speed and agility and rolling out services rather than having to be tethered to a certain technology or tethered to a certain environment because it was so bespoke and unique.
Got it. So I don't think there's a company I've spoken to in the last few years that doesn't have some kind of story around artificial intelligence and machine learning. So let me see, Ian, do you got a story there?
That's where it's going for sure. I think on our journey though, that is, there's still so much to be done to be able to get that intelligence. But if you look at exactly what you're talking about, it's all about intent-based networking. I want to be able to make a decision as a human. I want to be able to push a button, and I want that to be pushed out to the environment. I want to know, do I have capacity? I want to know, do I have the credentials? That's all of where it's going to go. And a lot of it, as we're starting to collect all this information. We're starting to understand what is needed to do to make these decisions. But certainly that's the top of the pyramid, and that's where everybody's ending up.
Got it. So how much of this is in your control? I mean, some of these are connections and APIs and things are standards based, others are proprietary. How much how much are you dependent on your success to wait on standards and wait on other companies to be compliant with those standards?
You know, as we've been going through this for the last 4 years, obviously there's huge standards bodies and they're all working towards trying to come up with what it's going to be. Now, trying to get the vendor community and the customer community all in alignment with that it takes time. Independent of all those standards, it's moving, and it's moving now. It's an API first mentality back to software. If we have an API, it doesn't matter because now we can do what we need to do. As long as we can talk to the software, we can make the changes, we can deploy the solutions. So as that matures, I think it's going to become more of but for now, it hasn't slowed the adoption down from our perspective.
Very good. Ian, talk to me about a use case that you were involved in that you think is interesting for the audience.
Yeah, we have, if you look at the folks that are deploying this technology, for us, it's about rolling out services, it's speed of rolling out services. Where we've seen a tremendous amount of value for our customers as they roll out applications, the technology we built has allowed us to take what was 2 people for 24 months, going through a process. We brought it down to a week. And provisioning new services in the data center, it's everything from the load balancers, the security firewall, the network devices, it's the entire process end to end.
Got it. Now, couldn't you have picked a simpler area to start a company, Ian?
We laugh about that because this is my 3rd startup. And typically when you have these types of technologies, you start with very innovative, smaller customers that want to work with more of an entrepreneurial type of environment. The inverse happened to us. Our first customers were the largest, most complex networks on the planet. I think we do business in just about every continent. And it's the big financial services folks, it's the big service providers. And the reality is that speed of service is top of mind for those folks. And they're willing to work with companies like ours because it is such a pain point that needs to be addressed. And what we got out of it is we went right to prime time. They don't suffer technology that isn't mature. They don't suffer solutions that are half baked. They are, and it's forced us to get very mature very fast and scale very quickly.
All right. So I'm going to ask you as we wrap this up, Ian, to put on your futurist hat, pull up that crystal ball, look forward 36 months. How do you see this industry changing?
I think you're going to see some major, I hate to be cliche with disruption, but there's going to be some folks that aren't going to make the journey, and there's going to be folks that you haven't heard of. They're going to be very successful in this journey. We always see that, as this goes, that it's going to be software, and it's so shockingly 4 years ago, we were talking about all this very sophisticated stuff, and then we were forced to do a lot of the more mundane stuff. In the last 6 months, it's moving at a pace that's faster than we've ever seen it. So it will be software driven, and it will be automated. We're going to see it grow exponentially over the next 36 months.
Wow. Ian, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insight, wisdom, experience, industry knowledge with all of us today.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.